This is the Roller Coaster Podcast, and I'm your host, Lucy Q. Life is a wild ride. It has twists and turns. It's scary, exciting, and downright fun. So throw your head back, arms in the air, and come along with me for the ride.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride.
Episode 200 of the roller coaster will soon be here, and this is your chance to be part of the fun. I'm going to be recording this episode with coaches and listeners just like you. If you want to be part of the fun, head over to nectargrowth.com. Sign up for free and RSVP for the November 18th event. All of the details will be under the events tab. I can't wait to see you there. What are you waiting for? Come join us. You know you're worth it. Carl Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." As humans, we let our past trauma and pain hide in the shadows. True healing comes when we shine a light on our shadows to reveal the hidden messages that have been shaping us through our subconscious mind. Joining me today is Nikki Colmone to share how we can heal from trauma, depression, and anxiety with shadow work. Hi, Nikki.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me. So I'm not familiar with shadow work. So what drew you to shadow work? What is it? And how can it help us in all of our healing?
Absolutely. So I'll start with just what it is. That quote is absolutely perfect because Carl Jung is the guy that made it all a thing, right? And so what it is, it's about diving into our past pain, our past trauma, and kind of ripping it out at the root. And that's kind of like the most basic thing that I can explain. But how I do it is we have three different parts of our mind, right? We have our conscious brain, which is like, this is information I need to do something with right now. And then we have our subconscious brain. And this is like, I don't need this quite yet, so let me just save this for later. And then we have our unconscious mind. And this is all of the stuff that our brain just does not know what to do with. It's all of the hard stuff. It's stuff from when you were a kid that you didn't understand, that you couldn't understand. It's stuff from past lives. I mean, it's all of the trauma, all of the stuff, whether it's big stuff or little stuff. It all gets housed there. And so when we can access our unconscious mind, we do that through a deep meditation. Some people can do it through hypnosis. I do it through a deep meditation. And what that does is that allows us to get your brain in a theta wave state. And getting it in that state is really important because that's kind of like when we're drifting off to sleep. And that accesses all of those memories, the things that we have pushed away for our whole lives or maybe many lives. And so when we're there, we can not only discover what it is that's holding you back, why you have certain fears, why do you have a fear of being heard or being seen, why do you have a random fear of, flying or swimming, right? Like these things, this is where we find those things out. And some people see them, some people just feel or know, everybody's different. But once we know what that information is, then since we're already in our unconscious, then what we can do is we can actually heal that situation. So if we take a situation when you were a young child, witnessing your parents fighting, and it was like very traumatizing for you at that young age, we can scoop up that little inner child and take her to a place that's fun and free, where she can just play and not have to worry about anything. And then when we come back into your waking life, we start to see all of the things that would be holding you back, things that you'd be afraid of, or maybe even toxic patterns and behaviors and beliefs just start to kind of melt away. So it's a really fast and efficient way to operate with mental health and any sort of mental health issue, because we're going straight at the root. And that's kind of what that is. And I found shadow work because I needed it done. I studied neuroscience and wilderness therapy in college. I wrote a book on it and everything. And so I was already well versed in neuroscience and how the brain develops, especially from childhood on. And I found my mentor and I started working with her. I had gone through a lot of trauma in my life, and I discovered a lot of trauma in several other lives that really held me back from who I wanted to be. And she helped me through a lot of that throughout shadow work. And she taught me how to do it, so that I could help others. And that's, kind of when I started getting into all of this stuff too, because I was a health coach for over 10 years. And I started off pretty typical, like eat this, don't eat that. Right. And then I realized like, everyone is struggling with the same things. They're coming to me with their trauma at the root of their issue, of their emotional eating, of their binging or whatever, their body dysmorphia, whatever it is trauma. And that's what I want to study. And so that's when I went to school. That's when I found shadow work, and it all just kind of unfolded from there. So
when you have somebody, when you first work with somebody and you bring them into that deep state of meditation, how do you begin to draw out those memories? Because if they're suppressed, they're hidden, they're even from a past life, how do you even begin to know how to start plucking them out? Because the person you're talking to obviously have hidden them away for a reason.
Right. And that's such a good question. So obviously everybody is different, but what I tend to find is someone that's just starting their shadow work journey, on our first few sessions, they're pretty light, because your brain is going to give up the things that it's ready to give up. Like nothing is ever going to be forced. Nothing is ever going to be re-traumatizing, because your brain is so smart. So it's going to give up some of the things that you're just like, okay, like I know I'm ready to give this up. So those things are usually what comes first, not really the deep stuff. I mean, occasionally I'll have people come in and they go get crazy, and that's just because they're really open and ready for it. Right. But most of the time, it's the small little stuff like seeing your parents fight, or having your mom yell at you for coloring your hair when you were younger, or something like that. Right. And then as you keep doing it, you're able to go deeper and deeper and deeper. So things like meditation, visualizations, and all of those types of things really help our subconscious to feel like it's safe. Like, oh, I'm safe now. I can let go of some of this stuff. So then when we continue to do shadow work and they continue to do meditations or visualizations or guided meditations or whatever, then they're able to come back and we're able to go deeper and deeper and deeper, because their brain is starting to realize like, oh, this is just something we do. We go in and we let go of things that we're ready to let go. Right. So it's kind of a process. It's definitely not a one-time thing. It's a lifelong journey. It's something that we always need to be doing.
And is it something that you have to be in the same room as the other person? I mean, given the world that we're in, where, everything's through video calls online, is it something that somebody can do remotely, or do you have to be in the same room with them?
Oh, I've only ever done it remotely. From the get-go. I mean, I pretty much started all of this, like my own business right when COVID hit. So it was all remote anyways. And it's all I had experienced. And really it's no different than being in person with Zoom or whatever else that people use. Like I can see you as clear as if you were sitting right in front of me. Obviously, I mean, would it maybe be a little bit more powerful in person? Maybe, but ultimately I can still see you. I can still pick up on your body language, and I can still guide you through it just fine over the computer.
And can somebody start off some of that initial safe groundwork? Is that something that they can do on their own, sort of like a DIY, before diving in deeper, or even knowing if they want to dive in deeper?
Yeah, absolutely. We can do shadow work ourselves literally every single day, all the time. We do that with journaling. We do that with our own meditations. We do that with contemplating, why do I keep perpetuating the same toxic behavior or the same belief? Where does this come from? Right? Like there is so much that you can do on your own to just start to kind of open that up a little bit more. I'm always going to advise people to go deeper, because when we do, we transform. We start to really learn things about ourselves that we never knew existed, and we become better people the more shadow work that we do. So you can definitely do these things on your own. I tell people all the time that stream of consciousness journaling, where you just sit and you don't think and you just write and let whatever comes out come out, no matter how weird or crazy it sounds. Like that is a great way to start. Meditation every day is a great way to start, because these things will just kind of come up on their own.
So that freestyle journaling, should you start off with that thought in mind of, why do I do ... where is this coming from? Should you start off with those initial thoughts and just see what comes out? Or should you just try and just start from a completely blank zone?
Yeah, I mean, either or is fine. It really just depends on the person and where they're at. So if like something is coming up for you all the time, like, why am I so afraid to be seen and heard right now? Like that just keeps coming up. Like I keep hiding. Why is that? Right. Then you could journal on that, and just whatever comes out of that pen is what's coming up. Or if you just feel like, in general, I know I need some TLC, so whatever comes, just let it come, right? And it could just be as random as ever. Either and both are great to do. So those journal prompts and stuff, those are great to do. And doing it just on a whim is also great.
And for because I've always been told that when you're meditating, you're supposed to not let your mind be blank, but kind of you acknowledge a thought, but you let it pass. So how would shadow work, if you're going to DIY it, how would you sort of walk yourself through a meditation so that you're maybe getting some of that surface level shadow work?
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I hear that a lot. And there's different kinds of meditations. You can do a meditation like that. And it's really, to me, that's more of like stress management, maybe some anxiety management, right? But when it comes to like a shadow work, if you're going in with an intention, you're going to get out of it what your intention is. So if you're going to go meditate just because you need some time to relax and process the stress that you're going on through just day in and day out, that's a great way to just process that. But if you're going into your meditation and you're like, I really want to see what's there, I want to start this shadow work process, right? That's where things will probably come up. And some people have a hard time visualizing. And for those people, I would say a guided meditation or visualizations are a great way to start, because the more that we can visualize, the more that we're going to get out of our own like shadow work meditations. So, it really just depends on what your intention is, I feel, when it comes to meditating. You can have a meditation that's very calm, clear, and just very peaceful and zen. You could also have a super active, wild meditation that's just crazy and just so active, right? And that both are perfect because they just serve different purposes.
Okay. And I want to touch on past lives, because I know that's something I'm going to say a lot of people are going to call BS on.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Everybody's got, their right to opinion.
Yeah.
But how do those past lives manifest in our mind today?
I love that question so much. So yeah, the thing with past lives is those are stored in our unconscious too. And everything that's in our unconscious, it's going to come out, but it's not going to come out in a healthy way. Like if we were going to do shadow work, it's going to come out in aggression or frustration or anxiety or even ADHD. It's going to come out in physical ailments, even sometimes. It's going to come out with toxic patterns of like choosing really toxic partners. It's going to come out in so many different ways that you can't really explain. Like, why can't I get this person out of my life? Why can't I seem to choose someone that's healthy for me? Why can't I love myself, right? So these are all things that, you know, can be buried from your own past trauma from this life, but a lot of it is repeated trauma over several lives, right? So, I mean, if you think about all of the healers and the witches out there, they're super scared to be seen and heard because they have been killed for just trying to heal and love people and let them do whatever they want to do. And so I see that a lot in that community of being afraid of using their voice and sharing who they actually are. And that's maybe something that came from this life, and that's one level of it, but chances are there's several lives where that's actually true. But the thing is with past lives is you're incarnating for a reason. Your soul wants to learn something. And so if you're not going to learn this lesson in this life, you're just going to keep coming back trying to learn that lesson. You want to know what it's like to speak your truth. You want to know what it's like to be a healer and to be a witch or whatever it is that you want to do. So until you actually learn how to do that, you're just going to keep going through the same thing over and over and over again. And that's kind of like how it manifests in our lives. And so the possibilities are really endless and how it can manifest in your waking life, but it definitely does. And in so many ways than that we even realize, to be honest. I mean, I'm still learning about some of the stuff that I continue to do that I'm like, oh man, that's from a past life. That makes no sense. But I mean, it does make sense, you know? So.
Yeah. And, you know, as I shared before we hit record, it came out in, I think it was my birth chart, that I've always been a healer of some sort. And another guest that I interviewed, she's an intuitive, and she said, yeah, I can see you at a table at sort of a marketplace, and you look the same, but you have all these dried flowers and herbs and bottles and containers in front of you. But in my story, I've always been persecuted, although I've been helpful and, you know, a source for people. There was always that sort of persecution there. And, you know, once I sort of understood that, it gave clarity to why I do things sometimes, or why I'm fearful of saying certain things. I'm an outspoken person. I mean, I don't think you have a podcast unless, you know, you love to talk. But there's some things that I have a level of discomfort with. And one of the things that I have a level of discomfort with that you brought up was witches. Because everybody seems to have this. I mean, obviously we grew up with the pointy hat and the Halloween costumes, and, you know, people think it's hocus pocus and it's evil and the devil's work in that. So can you maybe share a little bit more on what witchcraft is?
Absolutely. I love that you brought that up, because I was afraid too. When I grew up very Lutheran. And so this was devil worship.
I was going to say that's going to be really bad.
It was bad, right? I mean, in some regards it is, because my family, certain family members are, and they don't accept me as I am. But, you know, really what magic and witchcraft is, if we take a look at all of the healers that, you know, or the witches that, you know, way back when, what did they use? They used herbs and natural remedies, and people didn't understand how that worked because we didn't have the science to back that up. They didn't understand. Like, if we were going to take our iPhones and cell phones back to the 1600s,
this is sorcery.
This is sorcery. This is like witchcraft, right?
Yeah.
It was the same thing then. It just couldn't be explained. So I totally believe that everything science related is magic, and everything that we do as witches, healers, whatever you want to call yourself, a spiritual person, some things just haven't been explained by science yet. And that is magic. It's all related. It's all the same thing. But either your mind is open to it, or it's not. And you know what? It's fine either way, because you are on your own journey. But ultimately, like that, to me, that is what it is. And that's why it has progressed the way that it has, where it was herbalism and all this stuff that was so terrible because they couldn't explain it. And now we're seeing that herbalism and natural remedies are like kind of the norm now, but there's other things that science hasn't proven yet that they're kind of like, well, that's stupid. But my guess is like years down the road, they're going to prove it. And we're going to be like, yeah, see, we already knew this. Like epigenetics is one of my favorite examples. You know, like generational trauma, they have now proven is a real thing. It actually, trauma from your ancestors changes their DNA. And then that's DNA gets passed to you. So you're holding memories and trauma from your ancestors. That is a proven science called epigenetics. But witches and healers, we've known this. We have known this forever, right? But it's only now being proven by science. So it's just kind of like a perfect example of that. And that's my favorite one. And the other thing that we have to consider too is like, who's in power? Way back when, did the men, the physicians, did they really like it that women were solving their problems and doing a better job? No, they didn't. And so there's a lot of that behind it too. So, and there's a lot that can be talked about here.
It did. And I cannot help but see the irony. And you know where I'm going with this.
Yes, I do.
I cannot help but see the irony that, and I don't want to use certain words because I don't want to inadvertently get flagged for anything.
Yeah.
I don't know who's listening. I find the irony in depending 100% and only 100% on what's considered modern medicine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm frustrated when I see health professionals relying on pharmaceuticals rather than creating the healthiest body you possibly can.
Yes.
And the science exists to show that these things help build a strong immune system.
Yeah, right.
That, you know, something like your omegas, they help with a healthy brain. They help with things like depression and anxiety. I'm in Canada. We have legalized marijuana.
That's great.
It's, you know what? And I was telling the last guest, I was saying, I'm 48 and I've been dealing with crazy hormones for several years, sort of the menopausal stage. And I did not want to go on hormones. I did not want to go any route like that. Not to mention that even though Canada has free healthcare, I haven't had a family doctor in 8 years. Yeah. I started using a THC oil. Problem solved.
Yeah, seriously.
Like hot flashes, insomnia, craziness. It's all, sure, you get like, I mean, I think all women are just prone to crying cycles. That's just part of our beauty. Right. But this one little thing made everything else better.
Yeah, there's a lot to say on on all of that. I mean, obviously, like, we need modern medicine, we need emergency medicine.
Absolutely.
Like, that's absolutely true. Like, I'm not going to go see a naturopath when I'm having a heart attack. Like that is where it is so helpful, right? But the thing is that we do have all of this information about plants, natural remedies, and things like that, but yet they're not utilized because it's really just boils down, follow the money, follow where that money is going, you know, and that's your answer as to why. But it's funny to me that like you said, like medical professionals don't use it or prescribe it. I mean, you get why, because of the money, but I mean, those pharmaceuticals, they start from a plant. All pharmaceuticals come from some sort of a plant. That's how they develop something, right? So it's just funny the way that it's like, okay, so why not just use that that particular thing, right? And I see this a lot, like doing what I do with, I see a lot of depression and anxiety and things like that. And I'm not knocking anyone taking depression or anxiety medication. I think that sometimes that can be a relief enough to get the help that you need, right? But that's where it should be. That's how it should be used. That's how these medicines should be used, is a temporary thing, not this lifelong thing where it's like, oh, I'm on anti-anxiety medication, I'm good, I'm just going to keep taking this for the rest of my life. It's there for you if you really need it, because it's controlling your life. And then you can go in, you can dive into your shadow work, you can dive into herbal remedies, you can dive into the THC and all of that stuff, and that's where you find your answer, and then you can get off of that. But we live in this community of this world where that's just like, no, you just take drugs until you die.
And I was one of those people that was put on antidepressants, and my doctor put me on them. And then my doctor left the community, and I no longer had a family doctor, and no other doctor would let me come off of them.
Yeah. See, that's where it's so messed up.
6 years, 6 years.
Yeah.
I was on it. And really for me, and again, yes, there are people with different forms of depression that it is truly a chemical problem. There is, real reasons behind it. Not to say that our emotions aren't real, but, my learnings about my own depression, it was, and being on antidepressants is they're numbing you from picking up on those cues that your body, your mind, your soul, the universe is trying to get you to listen to.
Yeah.
You're numbing them, you're pushing them aside. And unless you let them come up and deal with them, there's nothing wrong with us having our feelings, but somehow we live in this society where they don't want us to feel. They want us to check the boxes and do as we're told and punch the clock.
Oh, I mean, that really, when you come down to it, that's exactly what's going on. And that's exactly what it is. I mean, why would you want, if you are trying to get as much power as possible, why would you want people thinking for themselves? Why would you want that? You wouldn't. You want them to be these drones that just do as they're told. Right. And and you're right. That's exactly what these medications and stuff do. These prolonged periods of utilizing them, is it suppressing your messages from source, your guides, and it's taking control of you, not you taking control of your health. And that's kind of the lie, which is unfortunate. But I feel like, and I, doing what I do, I see all the time depression, anxiety, ADHD. I mean, these things are usually a lot more spiritually connected than we actually know. Like my ADHD, I think, is like a superpower. Like I just, society would have me believe that I just like am super empathic, and I just take in a lot of information and a lot of feelings and emotions and that sort of thing. And while, yes, that's true, but it's so much deeper than that. No, it's these are psychic messages that are coming to me from all angles, and it's hard to regulate because there's so much. But really, when you learn how to harness that, you start to harness your mental health. You start to harness your ADHD, your anxiety, your depression, or any of those things. And so that's something that I see all the time doing what I do is people coming to me with depression, anxiety, having had tried literally everything. And when we dive into their shadow, they recognize where that comes from, and they're stepping into their own power and actually learning how to utilize the struggles that they've gone through, no matter what they were. They're utilizing them, and that's making them more powerful and standing in their truth. And that makes more of a difference than anything, honestly. That's what I see that every day.
It's not easy looking back to those past traumas and digging them out and looking at them. But when you do, again, in my experiences, you start to, I want to say you're looking from the outside in, like you're observing what happened.
Right.
And you have a better understanding of, and more compassion for the people that were involved in that situation. Because ultimately, we're all human beings here having a human experience. My experience is different than your experience. And ultimately, it's underlined with personal choice. So it's this, it's this potentially this perfect storm that you can be involved in. But once you can be that observer and understand all of the moving parts, then I almost want to say, I almost want to say that it's more than clarity. It's a clarity and understanding, and you can make sense of it.
Right.
And then you shed it.
Right. Exactly. A lot of people are really scared to start shadow work and to kind of go back through some of this stuff. I mean, I've literally had people say, like, I don't want to do that. No way. And I get it. I did that for a long time, and you have to be ready for sure. But when you said it perfectly, you're not going through it again. You're not re-experiencing it. You're looking at it as from an outside perspective, because when we are going through these traumatic things, our brain is in trauma mode. It's in survival mode. It's not going to process the emotions. That's not the time, right? Like when we're in survival mode, our brain is focused on one thing only, and that is surviving. It's not going to process emotions. It's not going to process any other information. So when we go back into shadow work and we see what's happening, it's not scary. It's not anything to be afraid of, because you're seeing all of the moving parts, right? You're seeing and understanding your emotions behind it. You're seeing and understanding the emotions behind the other person or the place, whatever it is that's going on. Like you're seeing all of the things and you're getting so much understanding. You're like, whoa, that makes so much sense. And when you come out of that into your waking life, it's like so easy to shed. It's so easy to just release that. When I started doing this, and I was terrified of calling myself a witch. I couldn't get the words out of my throat. They just wouldn't come. And I did shadow work, and I went back into several past lives where I was killed for doing exactly what I'm doing. And I just, every single time I was like, I think I'm a little bit closer. Like I can feel it. And then eventually I was like, yeah, man, like I'm a witch. And I came out to like my whole family and I said, guys, guess what? I think that all of this shit is bullshit and I'm a witch and this is what I believe. I've always been into it. And you know what? Yeah, like I lost a lot of people, but what I gained was so much better, And since then, oh my gosh, like everything changed in such good ways, because it was like my soul finally like, good, finally you did it. Like now we can just sit in some abundance here. Now we can get new friends that are actually soul aligned. Now we can actually make money with the things that you're doing. Now you can just get rid of some depression and baggage and stuff. Like you don't need it anymore. Like you can feel more alive, and that's how it all works. So yeah.
And those people that we lose, they were never on our side in the first place.
No.
They were likely contribute, and that's a harsh thing to say, because a lot of those times those people are our family members.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. I still going through that one, and it's not easy to just cut people out, especially if they're family. Like that's really hard. But there's a time and a place for these people in your lives. And sometimes that ship sails, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's no hate, there's no anger. It's just, you just don't belong in this chapter of my life until you can get back on my ship. if you're ready to get back on my ship, you're welcome. But like, until then, no, you're going a different direction. And, you know, a lot of those toxic people that we lose, I mean, that's exactly what they are. They're just holding us back. They're us being afraid of being alone. And so they're better than nothing, is what we kind of start to believe. And I lost probably like 99% of my friends and some family members when I said, hey guys, I'm a witch. So I know what that feels like, but I still would do it over and over and over and over again, because I started, as soon as I did that, I met friends that I know I have had lifetimes with, and we vibed like so hard. And I've met all of these amazing people, had all of these amazing experiences that would have never come if I hadn't. And so it was worth it, because those genuine relationships, the people that were holding you back, they weren't filling anything. They were taking a place without filling anything. But the people that you get, once you get rid of that, they're filling those empty spaces finally. And you realize how empty you felt even with all of those people, because these people are coming in. There's far fewer, but they're coming in and they're just like lighting you up from the inside out. And that's how it is. So it's scary to do, for sure, because maybe you haven't done it, but it's always going to be worth it.
Yeah. That moment that you realize who your authentic self is,
Mm-hmm.
life changes.
Yeah.
Life changes.
Absolutely.
Nikki, this has been a fascinating conversation, and I know our listeners are going to want to connect with you. Where's the best place for them to do that?
Honestly, Instagram is where I'm at most of the time. So it's just my name at Nikki Colmone. And I do have a podcast called Witchcraft and Wellness. I talk about all things mystical and magical and health related, since I do have like a very large health background. And my website too is where you can get some more info on me, which is just my name, NikkiColmone.com. I am currently working on a program that I'll be launching in the new year, designed for helping women find sensual peace after sexual trauma. And that's something that's like been a huge passion of mine for a long time. And so I'm really excited about getting that program rolling out in the new year and stuff. So that's going to be really huge. So I have a lot of content on my Instagram. I'm on TikTok too. So I have a lot of content on those places that I talk a lot about past life regressions. I talk a lot about shadow work, you know, all things about sexuality and sensuality and all of that too. So
if you're listening and you're looking at connecting with Nikki, make sure you check out our show notes. I'm going to have all of her links in there. And Nikki, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your story today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is awesome.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Roller Coaster Podcast. Want to chat or share your ideas about today's show? Pop me an email at hello@therollercoasterpodcast.com. Don't forget to connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at The Roller Coaster Podcast. Our theme song, Roller Coaster, was performed by The Lucky Setback. Audio editing by the one and only Jeff Quigley of Quigley Creative.
Life is like